Well, children, where there is so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think that twixt the Negroes of the South and the women at the North, all talking about rights. The white man will be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man when I could get it, and bear the lash as well. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children, and seen most all sold off to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman? Then they talk about this thing in the head. What's this they call it? Intellect. That's it, honey. What's that got to do with women's rights or Negroes' rights? If my cup won't hold but a pint, and yours holds a quart, wouldn't you be mean not to let me have my little half-measure full? Then that little man in black there, he says women can't have as much rights as men, 'cause Christ wasn't a woman. Where did your Christ come from? Where did your Christ come from? From God and a woman. Man had nothing to do with him. If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, these women ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. And now they is asking to do it. The men better let them. Obliged to you for hearing me. And now old Sojourner ain't got nothing more to say.
This year we launched what we call My Brother's Keepers. It's all about a whole bunch of folks, educators, business leaders, faith leaders, foundations, government, all working together to give boys and young men of color the tools that they need to succeed and make sure that every young person can reach their potential.
My Brother's Keeper, while launched this year by President Obama, is by no means a brand new initiative. It's a new name, it's a catchy name, and it's great that it was announced now by the nation's first Black president. However, the work of funding Black men and boys, of funding programs that serve men and boys of color, goes back about 20 years or more.
In the aftermath of the acquittal of George Zimmerman, who killed Trayvon Martin, the president responded to the grief that was widespread with what he considered to be the interventions that he could put forward. There would not be any serious or significant structural kind of interventions, new programs to fight the rollback of civil rights and other kinds of social protections. Instead, it was going to be a healthy fatherhood kind of initiative in which there would be no government money, but there'd be essentially these feel-good kind of programs that provide important things, but they don't provide the kind of things that would actually make a difference.
Our dollars have almost created a deficit in funding for women and girls of color, right? And so not only are we funding programs and interventions, but we're also funding research. And foundations that do the work with integrity, as most of my colleagues are doing, and as the folks at the Men and Boys of Color table are doing, ground their work in research. Right? And so they seek to do root cause analysis, and then that informs the philanthropic strategy. And so they've invested in the research to find out what is happening to men and boys of color, and have not invested in the research for women and girls of color, and therefore cannot have a philanthropic strategy to address the needs of women and girls.
I would have loved to see it in the program and still hope to see in the program. There's still time to see in the program a gender and racial inclusive lens that also includes girls of color, LGBTQ youth, trans youth, and gender nonconforming youth.
We can't wait any longer. This has been going on far too long. It's time for people to realize we're part of an integrated community. We're in the same families, same communities, same schools, same churches. And so anything that's going to work holistically for the community has to work for women too. We've been waiting for over 23 years. This has been going on since the late 80s, early 90s. This isn't going to go away. It's not suddenly going to be the case that someone's going to wake up and say, oh yeah, we forgot about the women and girls. This has created its own industry, its own frameworks, its own understandings. And in that understanding, women of color and girls are simply marginal, or they can handle it themselves, or they're really not suffering as much. The fundamental problem at this point is much of the data that has been used to support the exclusion of women and girls is only data that asks the question about men and boys. So they're basically predicating the exclusion of women and girls on the fact that they've excluded them all along.
It's been 151 years between Sojourner Truth speaking at that women's convention to Kimberly Crenshaw, running down a program earmarked for black boys. All right? Earmarked for black boys. And, I just think about it. Sojourner Truth, speaking at that women's convention, giving that supposedly iconic speech, was one of the things they used to keep black men away from getting the vote. All right? She thought of herself as a woman first and a black person second, even though she was a slave that had escaped slavery. She had watched some of her children get sold into slavery and ran away because they were going to sell the last one, I believe. All right? She ran away, and then she went to court to sue to get one of her children back. And I think she was successful in getting one of her kids back. More power to her on that one. But when she spoke at that, that gathering of women, and they didn't want her there, when she spoke there, they used that speech, to hang about our neck, like a albatross and shit. Deny us the vote. We're going to make significant progress. And it's debatable and shit, how that would have turned out if we got to vote earlier than, what we ended up doing and shit. But her actions in the name of, women's rights and shit, not so much civil rights, had a whiplash, had a butterfly effect up into the modern times and shit, okay? The whole civil rights movement, and it was about, establishing our humanity and our rights and shit, trying to get tangibles and shit, trying to get reparations and shit. And you can trace that shit, one of the roadblocks, one of the millstones hanging about, people's necks and shit, back to that fucking speech she gave. All right? Let's think about all the people that died between the time she gave that fucking speech to the modern time, to the civil rights movement, ending with ending with Martin Luther King's assassination. Just think of the ripples in time because of her speech, because she saw herself as a woman before, being a black person. Ain't I a woman? Well, I don't know. The minority majority of your time, they looked at you as more as a pack mule and shit, and a breed mare. Man, if I, use a quote, a fat bitch who lied on us, online, and received no comeuppance for that, no justice. All right. That's how it goes down here in the ethnic community. Sometimes I call it the slave quarters or the colonies. This country, America, 3Ks and set. So why do we celebrate Sojourner Truth when she was a traitor to her own fucking people as a collective? All right, she saw herself as a woman first, not a black person, not black people. Okay, she saw herself as that. She was born into slavery. She was a slave. She escaped slavery because they were going to sell her daughter and shit, and ran away. And then later on, she decided she was sued to get the boy back. I guess she needed somebody to sweep up around the house. You know, did she think about her son when she was giving that fucking speech? You know, helping them to deny black men the vote? Did she even think about that? Think about all the people that died, you know, since she gave that speech up until we got shit, somewhat squared away in the 60s. All right? And then with Martin Luther King's assassination. Then you come forward in time. You come forward in time, right? You got Kimberly Crenshaw sitting on a show, running down a program meant to help black boys catch up, you know, academically speaking, among other things. You know, she's never called the carpet. She continues going about her tenure as an educator and everything. You know, with no real pushback except from Dr. T.S.A. Johnson. He's put out some information on her. All right, we need to do more of that shit. We need to run these motherfuckers down. Okay, Kimberly Crenshaw, we need to stay on her bumper. Her actions were by and large detrimental to our community here in the present day. All right, it's the tail end of 2022. I want 2023 to be a pirate flag with the middle finger in the middle of it instead of skull and crossbones. All right, we got to stop this shit. We got to stop letting these misandrists, these black identity extremists, these female terrorists and shit run our community into the ground and shit, or just burn it down. I say, fuck it, let it burn. Start fighting it then, okay? Just stop fighting it. Just go along with it. If you're gonna let this same shit keep going up, we're gonna keep going around in a circle doing the same shit over and over again. I'm irritated because 85% of men still voted for Stacey Abrams. And I'm glad that bitch lost it. We know she's going to come back again. She's going to keep coming back. All right? You know why she's going to come back? We can go all the way back to that speech Sojourner Truth gave. And then take your ass back the other way to Kimberly Crenshaw, running her fucking mouth, running a program into the ground, destroying the program. All right? They see us, they infantilize the black male contingent of the population. They miseducated them. All right, they taught them to be less while bringing up their women and shit. And then it's so selfish. They didn't teach them no altruism. They're so fucking selfish. You know, they can't take any. They don't have any oversight. Okay, there's no checks and balances in our community, and that's why it's in the ground. I know this shit. You know, I've done so many litmus tests and shit in the last, 35 years or so with female contingent. It's like it's passive. They don't even know they're doing it. It's like muscle memory to be a misandrist. And, we could talk about social engineering all day, but it's still like you have your homes. You have what goes on behind closed doors. You have these women never-ending complaints about black men and shit talking, haranguing, and they fail to realize the fundamental answer to all their complaints is one simple question: who is the first teacher of the child? Who is the first teacher of the child? To a lot of black women, that's like the riddle of steel. Right? That's like the riddle of steel. Be all the end all. You know, you think about our situation economically and everywhere else and shit, and what the state of our community looks like. You always, common sense will take you to that question: who is the first teacher of the child? And then you ask yourself, why, when they came up with the welfare program, could only get it if men weren't in the house? They could only get benefits if men weren't in the house because they knew you would fuck up. They knew you were running down this shit. When Gloria Steinem came into our community, our ethnic community, During the civil rights era, she went for a black woman. But yet, we have to listen to you black women talk about how black men always want white women to the exclusion of all else. You don't even realize you sound like a robot saying that shit. You sound like a robot. Okay? That's all they say. Black men want black women's. And now it's like the foreigners and shit. Okay? I don't want to get into a tit for tat. It's futile to have a discussion with most of these misandrous black identity extremists. It's futile. So you shouldn't have that. All right? I adhere to a certain acronym, and some of the teachers are Neely Fuller and John Henry Clark and shit, Claude Anderson, by and large and whatnot. To varying degrees, I employ these things in my life. All right? And I'm telling you, young kings out there, this revolution will not be televised in any way. The participation of our women and us rebuilding our communities is not fucking necessary. Their participation would be largely detrimental. If they're going to they're going to get better. They're going to change. They have to do it amongst themselves. They have to do it amongst themselves. No man can be involved in them course correcting. All right? And you owe it to yourself to be selfish and to find out who you are, to realize who you're supposed to be without anyone's influence. Whether you stay here, you go abroad, whatever. Be selfish, okay? Think of yourself, think of your happiness. Find out who you are. Protect your seed. Do not make children with these women. Okay? Don't make children. Protect yourself. Just think they have been the stewards of our community and they have fucked it up. They have populated it with, the dregs of humanity. They have the gift of life. They have the cradle of life in their womb. And what do they fucking do? They get to make the choice about who has a child. All right? There's umpteenth forms of birth control. There's tons of birth control. But you still hear them talking about black men making black women babies daddies. Make it make sense. When you got all this fucking birth control, a man just has a goddamn condom and a vasectomy. All right? A goddamn condom and a vasectomy. If you could go back when they established birth control and they just had a birth control pill for men, there wouldn't be our population would be down. Okay? They control who has the baby. And because of government oversight from the minority majority, they control the future of your family once you give them your seed. They can decide what they want your family to be in its future. And it's largely negative. Okay? It's largely negative. And they want to ace you out. They want to erase you. They want to diminish you in every fucking arena. They want to erase your ass. And they want to assume both roles, the mother and the fucking father and shit. It's an abomination. It's against nature. It's against the Most High. That's why they go through all this drama and this weird, crazy emotional thunderstorms that run through these goddamn women. They terrorize their households and their families. They make shitty decisions. They drag everyone down. Break the chain. That's what I'm telling you guys. You gotta break the chain, man. You can love your family, man, but you have to think of yourself first. Okay? A lot of people, they get locked up in a situation before they can even get out the house properly and shit. And I'm serious when I say that shit about women, about them having the power. They've been gifted by the Most High the cradle of life to have babies. They can't pair bond because of all the social engineering, all the slavery, always since slavery to now and shit. They've been stabbing you on your fucking back. They've been running over you. They've been, behind the door, giving information to the minority, majority and shit, helping keep you enslaved physically, mentally, and fucking spiritually. Okay? So, knowing what we know, knowing what we know, how can you trust them? All right? I'm not saying there's not good women out there, and I hate to put a disclaimer. I fucking hate it. And I hate how I have to say that. I hate when we talk about the female contingent in our community. We always have to use a disclaimer. We do it. We just do it naturally. I did it without thinking. It was reflexive. It was as reflexive as their misandry and overt narcissism, in our ethnic community and shit. They have no limits and shit inside the fishbowl that is the black community and shit here in the States. They have no fucking filter and shit. And you shouldn't care because you have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose, everything to gain and shit. No matter if it turns out negative. Okay, no matter if it turns out negative. Just keep in mind, okay? Just wanted to point out, it's been 151 years.
This message has been paid for by the Dusties. Yes, the niggas you love to hate.